Time to talk a little Wolfpack. I'm not going to count down. I'll let our next guest do the countdown for us for Wolfpack football and the rest of the ACC in week 0, so to speak. Joining us on the Heaster Automotive Group hotline, editor of Pack Power 247, Cory Smith. Good morning, Cory.
Good morning, guys. How are y'all doing?
We're good. You've already got a story up on Pack Power talking about the 2027 season, which, seriously, you're already looking that far ahead? We haven't even played the 2026 season. And Dave Doran talked about his quarterback and C.J. Bailey and coming back and how excited he is to get back out on the field and trying to build consistency and whatnot. But we chatted about this a couple of weeks ago, and now that you've actually had a chance to talk with him in person and you kind of ran through the gamut of everybody that he talked to in Charlotte last week, how does it look to you in terms of him changing the narrative about the Pack and competing in 2026?
I think the biggest thing for him is it just seems looser. He just seems like, he talked about it a little bit last season, how much more he enjoyed coaching that team last year. And I think getting some of those essential pieces back that were leaders from last season, like Isaiah Shirley, like C.J. Bailey, like Duke Scott, that he brought all those guys to ACC kickoff for a reason. And I think having a lot of those pieces back, I think has given him a little more comfortability to say, all right, I know that I have players that want to lead. Now it's time to bring the other guys along, bring some younger pieces along, and bring some guys that were veterans other places that now need to, be those veterans and step up at NC State this upcoming season.
So he gets news that he's going to lose one of his big upfront guys in Jalen Hampton. Was this more of a depth piece for him, regardless, because he was such a late addition from the portal?
Yeah, I mean, he was a depth piece, Jalen Hampton, but he was a depth piece at a position where you absolutely needed depth. Because the only two guys that they really like right now at the offensive tackle position going into the season, Jamari McCrimmon that comes over from ECU that's probably going to slide into the left tackle position after losing Jacarius Peak, and then Teague Anderson over the right tackle position. Outside of that, there's a lot of young players that can step up, and maybe some versatility. Maybe a guy like Yusuf Mugerville can slide over there. He is a 6'5", offensive guard, and then you have Rico Jackson that's also kind of the same position. But really, outside of those guys, I mean, you're looking at some really young players that would need to step up there if you aren't able to get any other depth, or if you lose either one of those guys, you're going to be kind of left needing to find some depth somewhere.
Okay, so you're talking about forcing a guy who Dave was high on last year in Spike Sowles to be more of a leader up front. Is he able to take that step and develop some serious chemistry with C.J. Bailey and allow Bailey to take a bigger step in his ascension?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was already kind of built from the moment that Spike arrived. Like, if you've ever had the opportunity to talk to Spike, he is one of the most contagious personalities I've ever been around. Like, talking to him at a high school, he already seemed like he was a third-year college player. Talking to him once he arrived at NC State, he already knew, the traditions, understood what Dave Doran was looking for, like, got into the energy that 2J brought. Like, this is a kid that just immediately coming into NC State, he knew that he wanted to be great, knew that he wanted to live up to, the expectations that his father set. I mean, his father played at Indiana, ended up playing in the NFL for multiple seasons. His uncle played in the NFL. I think somewhere along the line, he has some guys that were, Heisman finalists as well, or Heisman winners in his family. So there's a lot of different football tradition in his family, and I think it's something that comes out. Earl Campbell was the name I was looking for. That was a Heisman winner and ended up playing in the Oilers. So multiple guys in his family that he wants to live up to that tradition. And I think he already did that from day one when he stepped on campus at NC State.
All right, so you're leaning a lot, and this is what we're talking with Cory Smith, editor, Pack Power 247, joining us here on the Heaster Automotive Group hotline. You're rolling through at Pack Power 247 the most important players, the 20 most important players of the season so far, and you guys have been on a run lately of defensive players, cornerbacks, defensive backs, and King Mack, the transfer from Penn State, the safety. Is this you telling the world right now that if these guys go on full lock, that they can control some of these ACC quarterbacks? Because for a conference that has positioned itself as the conference of quarterbacks, for me this season, doesn't quite feel the same as it has in past seasons at that position.
Yeah, there's a lot of really young pieces there are a lot of really young quarterbacks that need to step up when it comes to the ACC. And, we went on that run of talking about a lot of these guys, and some of them were returning players. Obviously, Jackson Vick and Brian Nelson both contributed in a big way last season. That was number 10 and number 9 for us, respectively. And then King Mack, I think, that all of those guys, not only are they on the defensive side of the football, but they're all DBs. And it's hugely important for NC State to have all those guys step up. They're most important for a multitude of reasons, not just because of the fact that they can be very talented, but also because they are at the very top of the depth chart at a position of absolute need for NC State going into the season. They've got some other young guys that have come into the system, in particular at nickel and at the cornerback positions. But really, at safety, you needed a veteran to step in, and that's what King Mack provides. And then, again, with Brian Nelson II, everything we've heard out of camp, whether it was the spring or summer workouts, he's been a guy that's just really shined this offseason. And if Jackson Vick can stay healthy, all three of those guys can play a shutdown position for NC State along the defensive side of the football. And like you said, I mean, not as big of a deal as far as quarterback position is concerned, but there are some on the schedule that NC State is going to have to contain. It starts with Bo Pribula in week 1, a guy that has some experience and is going to be playing in an offensive system that's going to let him go a little bit more often with Virginia starting off.
Yeah, and on the road as well. Cory Smith, editor, Pack Power 247, joining us here on Next Up here on 99.9 The Fan. I'm going to spoil number 1 for you. I think it's going to be Kanoa Vineset.
Definitely. He was number 20, actually.
No, you had him reversed was the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah, you're right.
He should have been 1 because otherwise we're going for 2 all the time, or we're if we get stuck at the 40, I say we. If the Pack gets stuck at the 40, I need a guy that's gonna put something between the uprights from 55 yards out. I kid a little bit, but I think kickers are important. Don't devalue the kicker now for me there, Cory.
I'm not.
Yesterday, Justin Gainey spoke to the media talking about how summer camp has gone. Where's your confidence level in him right now that the portal has kind of closed? He's settled on his 13 guys. And right now, for me, it feels like he's just kind of trying to say all the right things until he can unveil his non-conference.
Yeah, I think it's still yet to be determined at this point. I mean, I think your confidence in him right now is at a good level just because of the fact that he's constructed the type of roster that he wants. He's put together a lot of really good pieces that you like. They have a lot more depth in the front court than some previous teams have had. We'll just put it there. And then you really like the pieces. He talked about Preston Edmeade. You needed an initiator in this offense to be able to, first of all, draw some attention away from Paul McNeil, but also be a guy that can get some paint touches, be a guy that can, actually, again, initiate your offense. And that's the one thing that you were missing if you didn't end up getting another point guard in this system. So you really like what you get there. But then the other factor, too, here is the fact that, they bring in a lot of depth. And you really like the way that a lot of these guys stack up, some of them defensively, some of them more of an offensive efficiency standpoint. So you really like what they've been able to put together. And again, talking to him yesterday, he's just like, look, man, this is just laying the foundation. That's the plan here. So as much as, Will Wade talked about doing that last year, you actually believe it from Justin Gainey this time around. And you can see kind of the way that he's building this program is not only for this year, but for the future too, with a lot of these guys able to return for multiple seasons.
Sure, certainly. And there's nothing for anyone to believe that Gainey's not going to be true to his word. And so this is why I asked this last question this is why I asked this last question about him, because Paul McNeil was a guy who hung out in the portal for a while. Like he was just dangling out there, and finally money, relationships, whatever it was, bring him back to state. Can you draw any sort of conclusion between that relationship that Gainey has with Paul McNeil, who's going to be asked to step up and be the guy this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the prior relationship, because if you have a new head coach that comes in and says, hey, man, I really want you back, well, so does every other team in the country, basically. I mean, once he entered the portal, he got calls from all over, trying to find out what the price was, what his fit would look like, things along those lines. And the reason why I think he got drawn back to NC State was, number one, because Justin Gainey recruited him out of high school, talked to him whether he was at over at Richmond, or he went all the way across the country to prolific prep, or once he came back to NC State, all these different things. Like, he was still talking to him on a constant basis and wanting to have him on his team. Once he gets to NC State, it's like, all right, man, now not only are you going to be able to play for a guy that you have a relationship with, but also somebody that knows what it means to stick at NC State, to stay at NC State and see it through and have success, and really want to lead you to be that guy, be that staple. And I think part of the pitch was, hey, man, you have a chance to be one of the best players in NC State history. And not only that, but be one of the most loyal. And I think that's part of what drew him back, because, as we know, he is one of the most loyal guys in the NCAA. And not to say that it's that's not saying there's a whole lot of loyal guys in the NCAA anymore, but he happens to be one of them.
Well, you'll take the cases when you can grab them, and certainly helped NC State in keeping one of theirs at home with Justin Gainey stepping in as the new head coach. Cory Smith, Pack Power 247 editor there. Check it out, 247sports.com. Pack Power, just look it up. Very easy to find, and you can join, like, and subscribe what they are putting together. They have an annual VIP membership available, 50% off right now. Cory, always great to check in with you, friend. Hopefully you have a great weekend, and try to stay dry, okay?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Hey, this time next week we'll be at fall camp. So.
Stop it. Are we there already? I know we are. It's exciting. Exciting. Football's back in a meaningful way. Thanks, Cory.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, guys.
I'm Max Goren with 3 things you need to know right now from 99.9 The Fan. Carolina Panthers veterans report to training camp today, but a few will remain on the sideline. Quarterback J.C. Horn begins camp on the reserve NFI list with a cut on his foot, and offensive tackle Taylor Moton will miss significant time due to a blood clot in his lung. The Panthers face the Cardinals in the Hall of Fame game 2 weeks from tomorrow. After a nearly 2-month break for the World Cup, Charlotte FC returns to action tonight against their southeastern rivals Atlanta United. You can listen live to tonight's action right here on 99.9 The Fan. Coverage starts at 8 o'clock ahead of an 8:15 kickoff. The first-place Durham Bulls stayed hot last night, kicking off a series against the Memphis Redbirds with a 10-8 victory. They'll run it back tonight in Memphis. Bulls coverage is available on 620 AM Buzz Sports Radio, 99.9 FM HD2, and WRAL News Plus, with first pitch scheduled for 8:05 p.m. For all the latest news on your favorite teams, download the 99.9 The Fan app or visit 999thefan.com.
The Athletic ranked all 138 Division I quarterbacks and placed them in tiers. Darian Mensah transfers from Duke to the U, and the U has a good reputation of developing quarterbacks to become NFL prospects, and that's exactly what Darian Mensah told Tim Donnelly at ACC Media Days last week, is why he made that move. There's no doubt about it. Cam Ward is the number 1 pick. Carson Beck had question marks around him when he went from Georgia to Miami, dated one of the Cavenders, then broke up with one of them, huge mistake, and then ends up going to the league. He's in Arizona, right? He's Arizona, drafted by the Arizona Cardinals. Mensah jumped up the board to where in the quarterback tiers, there are 7 of them by The Athletic. There are 7. He is among tier number 1 and 8 quarterbacks. That includes C.J. Carr at Notre Dame. That includes Drew Mestemaker at Oklahoma State, who transferred from North Texas. Arch Manning is part of that tier as well. It's very clear that he is being considered the top quarterback in the ACC. I believe Dennis Cox yesterday during the drive had this conversation with you, Max, about who he had voted for ACC Player of the Year and at quarterback, and he said he had a tough time choosing between C.J. Bailey and Darian Mensah.
Yeah, as well as I believe it was Kevin Jennings at SMU was his kind of third consideration there.
And Jennings is in the tier 2 quarterbacks along with Sagapolotele of Cal. C.J. Bailey is in the top 17. He leads tier 3. Of those 3 tiers, 1, best of the best. 2, produced and teams win because of them. I would suggest the Cal quarterback might be along in tier 3 with the mix of proven guys who might not check the elite trait boxes and still have elite traits and have bright futures and are up-and-comers. That is where he is. That is where C.J. Bailey actually leads another group. And that other group is not really another group. It's full of names that you are certainly familiar with. Nico Iamaleava, of UCLA, Devin Dampier of Utah, Byron Brown, the former Rollsville High product, who's now at Auburn, who went from South Florida to Auburn with his coach, Alex Golesh, and Lenoris Sellers, who has all the big-time traits and can make all the big-time plays, but South Carolina last year, South Carolina's expectations, they were supposed to be kind of like the upstarts in the SEC. They were the upstarts. They just weren't plucky because they only won 4 games. But to have C.J. Bailey, Jennings, Sakapolatele, and certainly Darian Mensah in those top 3 tiers, that speaks well of the ACC, but the rest of the ACC seems to be a step down and a step down and a step down to where, as we just talked about with Cory Smith of Pack Power 247, the ACC maybe not the conference of quarterbacks, but maybe the conference of the chosen few quarterbacks. And Mensah leading that list. And again, him going to Miami lifted his stock that high, but he's going to have to prove it all 6'3" of him. And the same way with C.J. Bailey, who's going to put an entire team on his shoulders as ACC play gets underway in a few weeks.